And welcome back to Bayou Time. Always good to have Lieutenant Blake Tabor with us. He brings us valuable information about our area. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, let me just lead off because Terrebonne Parish, Tim Saunier announced the arrest of 3 Houma men stemming from a residential burglary investigation that occurred at a residence on the west side of Houma. Terrebonne detectives are continuing to investigate the incident and are still attempting to identify an additional suspect in the investigation. With that, I'll turn it over to the lieutenant. You got a lot of information on this.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting little case. So on Friday the 17th, shortly after 4 p.m., our patrol division was called to a private residence in regards to a residential burglary that was being reported. One of the interesting things about this was that there was someone home at the time that the burglary was occurring, which we don't know at this point was known or not to the suspect. So it's not something that typically we see, someone breaking into a home that's occupied, but in this particular circumstance it happened.
And I got to say, I'm one of them that it happened to way back. Somebody burglarized my house while I'm sleeping.
Right.
And so it is rare.
Sure, and look, and it happens, but for this to happen in broad daylight was also pretty interesting.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we have some arrests that were made, and you said you're still looking for one of them.
Absolutely. So in this particular case, when the patrol division got there, they were able to do a tremendous job in preserving the integrity of the scene. They did observe that the house appeared to be ransacked, and it was later determined that some electronic devices from within the house were stolen. As detectives were called in, of course, they did their due diligence with what they do, and they do an amazing job at it, but they were able to determine that there was some video surveillance footage associated with that residence. So they captured that video surveillance footage, and of course it led to the identity of a couple suspects involved in this case.
And they did that through linking vehicles, too.
Absolutely. There was a vehicle that was linked, which ultimately just kept the investigation going.
And we have some pictures up. Let's start from the beginning again, Jen, if we can. And there's your suspects that were they all arrested?
They were. Now, Mr. Rainey was the only one that was, so far, has been linked to the burglary investigation. We were able to determine through evidence and video surveillance footage that he was present at the scene at the time, which ultimately led us to a residence that he occupies on Henderson Street. So once we were able to obtain that information, of course, detectives secured a search warrant for that particular house. And again, once that was done, detectives as well as our SWAT team was called to assist with that investigation due to the background of Mr. Rainey. As we approached the residence, there was a vehicle that was attempting to depart the location. When detectives and SWAT members stopped that particular vehicle, the 3 suspects that you see photographed are the ones that were occupying the vehicle at the time.
And there was a lot more than just them at the location. Wasn't a lot of drugs and all.
There was. Again, once they were taken into custody, of course, they were all brought to our sheriff's office to be questioned. There was no additional persons found within the house. But as they began to do the search warrant, they began to notice a large amount of things other than just electronic devices.
Some of the things they had, multiple pieces of electronic equipment, over 7 ounces of methamphetamines, more than 41 grams of heroin, approximately 4 ounces of marijuana, close to 3 grams of MDMA, over 2,200 in cash, and 5 weapons. Y'all determined that one of the weapons was listed as stolen during an unrelated case, and detectives, y'all continue to review electronic devices to determine if there's a link, right?
That's correct.
All right, so that's, I guess when you see this many weapons, it's quite telling, isn't it?
It is. And, it's my understanding that Mr. Rainey has a background related to these types of activities. So, it was better for us to err on the side of caution and deal with this. But, of course, these investigations like this could lead to a multitude of things that could happen down the line.
When I used to ride with you guys way back, it was a little marijuana. Crack cocaine was just starting to come out, and it exploded. It's so different out there now.
It is. And, it's been a minute since I've worked on the road in a patrol capacity, but even as detectives, you know, you go and you get called to a scene, and the infusion of cameras and cell phones and things of that nature, I mean, it's taken our job to a whole different level, which is good, and it can also be bad.
Everybody back in the, well, nobody really back in the day, just a few people who could afford it, had security cameras on their home.
Absolutely.
Everybody can pretty much afford it.
It's pretty commonplace now. And, you know, again, we would love to go into neighborhoods and see cameras on every single house. You
Yeah.
know, we wish there was some sort of government funding to be able to do that sort of thing, you know, but it aids in our investigations, and we got lucky on this one, and it was a great score for us.
If anybody's watching that knows any more information, how can they get in touch with you guys?
Of course, we ask them to call the Sheriff's Office Investigative Division. They can reach us at 985-876-2500 and just ask for the Detective Bureau, or they can simply contact Crime Stoppers Bayou Region at 1-800-743-7433. And they also have an app that you can anonymously report information, and, you know, of course, we pay for that type of information if an arrest is
And
made.
let me just quote the sheriff, who in the press release said, "I'm very proud of the quality work completed by our deputies, detectives, and SWAT team members. These men and women do an unbelievable job of dealing with very difficult circumstances, which is vital to bringing offenders to justice." So just those words from the sheriff of Terrebonne Parish. Lieutenant, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your hard work.
Thanks for having me.
All right. There you have it. From Lieutenant Tabor, we'll take a short break. A lot more right here on Bayou Time.